Why is it that the more you stay silent, the more you are disrespected? Why do some people cross your boundaries without hesitation while you keep justifying them? The biggest mistake isn't being kind, but confusing silence with dignity. There is an invisible line that, when not defended, turns respect into contempt. Today you are going to discover the behaviors you must never tolerate, even if you have always been a quiet person. Stay until the end to understand why staying silent costs so much. It all starts subtly. A phrase thrown out with a smile, a joking comment in front of others. And you hesitate. Am I overreacting? Should I take it with humor? Here is the problem. Respect never disguises itself as mockery. When someone crosses a boundary and then hides behind, "I was only joking," they aren't testing your sense of humor. They are testing your ability to defend yourself. People who use these kinds of jokes watch your reaction carefully. If you smile awkwardly, if you stay silent, if you downplay what you feel, the message they receive is clear. This boundary is flexible. And when a boundary is flexible, sooner or later, it disappears. The psychology explains it clearly. Contempt rarely appears all at once. It is built little by little, normalizing small acts of disrespect until they become part of the dynamic. What is a joke today is an open humiliation tomorrow. Many people tolerate this because they don't want to seem confrontational, or because they grew up believing that setting boundaries is being hard or selfish. But the reality is different. Those who respect themselves don't need to raise their voice. They only need to be clear. No se trata de atacar ni de devolver la burla. It's about marking the boundary calmly. That comment doesn't seem funny to me. Nothing more, no long explanations, no apologies. When you do this, two things happen. First, healthy people correct their behavior. Second, toxic people walk away on their own. Both outcomes are a victory. Tolerating repeated mockery doesn't make you a good person. It makes you an easy target, and respect that isn't defended is lost. At first, it doesn't seem serious. You say you're tired and the conversation continues. You explain that something makes you uncomfortable, and the other person minimizes it. You ask for space, and they don't respect it. Here, an uncomfortable truth arises. Those who ignore your emotional boundaries don't forget them. They discard them. Boundaries aren't always broken with shouts or conflicts. Many times they are broken with soft phrases like, "You're overreacting." It's not that big a deal. That's just how I am. Psychology points out that people who constantly cross boundaries usually justify it as being natural or sincere. But sincerity without empathy isn't honesty. It's imposition. And imposition slowly wears down your self-esteem. When someone ignores how you feel, they force you to adapt to their comfort. Little by little, you start to doubt your emotions. You wonder if you are too sensitive, if asking for respect is asking for too much. This is the real danger, when you learn to betray yourself to keep the peace. Healthy relationships work differently. They don't require you to explain over and over again why something hurts you. A clearly expressed boundary should be enough the first time. If you have to repeat it constantly, the problem isn't your way of communicating. It's the other person's lack of interest in listening to you. Ignoring boundaries isn't always conscious malice, but it is always a choice, and repeated choices define the kind of relationship you are living. Accepting that someone doesn't respect your emotional boundaries isn't understanding. It's resignation. And resignation ends up turning into emotional exhaustion. Protecting your boundaries doesn't distance you from the right people. It only distances you from those who benefited from you not having any. Guilt doesn't always arrive as a direct attack. Sometimes it appears disguised as concern, as soft irony, as silences that weigh more than words. You express how you feel and the response isn't listening, but reproach. After everything I do for you, I'm always the problem, right? It's so hard to talk to you. In that moment, something subtle but powerful happens. Your emotions become a burden. Emotional psychology explains that guilt is one of the most effective tools of control. It doesn't need shouting. It doesn't need threats. It only needs you to start believing that feeling is doing harm. Little by little, you learn to stay silent, to soften what you feel, to think twice before expressing sadness, anger, or disappointment. Not because you don't have the right to feel, but because you don't want to trigger another negative reaction. This pattern creates a dangerous dynamic. The other person doesn't take responsibility for their behavior, and you take responsibility for how they react to your emotions. That's where chronic self-guilt is born. You wonder if you're being unfair, if you should be more understanding, if expressing what you feel is selfish. But emotions are not attacks. They are internal signals. And when someone punishes you emotionally for showing them, they aren't looking to understand you. They are looking to silence you. In a healthy relationship, emotions are heard, even when they are uncomfortable. They don't become weapons. They aren't thrown back as a reproach. If every time you speak, you end up apologizing for feeling, you aren't sharing your inner world. You are defending yourself. And living on the defensive wears you down more than any argument. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking it. Because feeling isn't manipulating. Expressing yourself isn't damaging. And you aren't responsible for the discomfort of someone who doesn't want to listen. They don't always tell you that you're wrong. Sometimes it's something more subtle, harder to point out, easier to justify. You talk about something that hurts you, and the response arrives wrapped in logic. You're overreacting. It's not that big a deal. That's just how you're seeing it. They don't tell you not to feel, but they make you doubt why you feel it. Emotional invalidation doesn't always deny the emotion. It denies its legitimacy. It reduces it. It minimizes it. According to relational psychology, when one person repeatedly invalidates another's emotions, they aren't seeking clarity. They are seeking narrative control. They define which emotions are acceptable, which ones are reasonable, which ones deserve attention. Over time, you start to distrust your own inner world. You wonder if you are being too sensitive, if you are reacting badly, if your perception is flawed, and that doubt is deeply corrosive. Because emotions don't need to be logical to be real. They need to be acknowledged. When someone constantly invalidates what you feel, they push you to justify every emotion as if you were on trial. You aren't speaking from experience. You are speaking from defense. That breaks something essential, emotional safety. You start to keep silent, to filter, to think if it's worth saying what you feel knowing it will be reduced to a bad day or a misinterpretation. But a healthy relationship doesn't require you to prove your emotions. It requires them to be heard. Invalidating isn't resolving. It isn't helping. It's disempowering the other person's experience. And when someone invalidates what you feel time and time again, they aren't helping you grow. They are training you to disconnect from yourself. Recognizing this behavior doesn't make you weak. It gives you back clarity. Because feeling isn't overreacting. Perceiving isn't inventing. And needing to be heard isn't a flaw. You start by talking about something specific. A gesture, a word, an action that hurt you. But the conversation never stays there. Suddenly, the topic is no longer what happened. Now it's how you said it. The tone, the moment, your reaction. The focus slowly shifts, almost without you noticing. And when you realize it, you're no longer talking about what they did to you. You're explaining why you felt that way. This shift in focus is a very common psychological strategy to avoid emotional responsibility. It doesn't deny the fact. It goes around it. It dilutes it. The person doesn't say, "It didn't happen." They say, "It didn't happen like that." Or even worse, "It happened like that because you." In this way, the conflict is never resolved. It's just rewritten. You try to go back to the initial point, but every attempt is remembered as a new accusation. As if insisting were overreacting. As if asking for an explanation were attacking. And then something dangerous happens. You start to get tired of talking. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it always ends the same way. In relational psychology, this pattern creates a constant sense of helplessness. Nothing is clarified, nothing is repaired, nothing is owned. The focus shifts again and again until the original problem disappears, without having been resolved. And when there is no responsibility, there is no change. A healthy relationship allows for returning to the origin of the conflict. It allows for saying, "I was wrong here." It allows for repair. But when someone systematically avoids that point, they aren't protecting the relationship. They are protecting their image. And you, without realizing it, end up carrying the weight of everything. Recognizing this behavior doesn't mean looking for someone to blame. It means reclaiming the right that what's important doesn't get lost in the noise. Because talking shouldn't be a battle of diversions. It should be a path toward clarity. It doesn't happen all at once. It starts slowly, almost invisibly. You remember something that happened, and the response is immediate. That never happened? You're making it up. You're remembering it wrong. At first you doubt only a little. You understand that anyone can be wrong. That memory isn't perfect. But when it happens time and time again, something changes. You start to question not just what you remember, but your ability to perceive reality. This behavior, known in psychology as reality distortion, is one of the deepest forms of emotional control. It doesn't attack a specific emotion. It attacks the very foundation of your internal trust. If you can't trust what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, what can you trust? Little by little, you seek external validation for everything. You reread messages. You go over conversations. You need proof to feel sure of something you already lived. And that wears you down. Because a healthy relationship doesn't demand constant evidence to validate your experience. It listens. It contrasts. It dialogues. But here there is no dialogue. There is repeated denial. When someone insists that your version of events is always wrong, they aren't defending the truth. They are rewriting history in their favor. And you, trapped in that fog, start to adapt, to stay silent, to accept versions that don't quite fit, just to avoid conflict. That is the highest cost, to stop trusting yourself. Recognizing this behavior is regaining the ground beneath your feet, not to attack, not to prove anything, but to believe in your own perception again. Because your experience matters, your memory matters. Your reality doesn't need permission to exist. When you look at all these behaviors together, something becomes clear. They are not isolated episodes. They are not occasional misunderstandings. They are patterns. And patterns don't appear by chance. For a long time, perhaps you thought the problem was you, that you felt too much, that you asked for too much, that you misinterpreted things. But none of these behaviors arise from your sensitivity. They arise from the other person's inability to take emotional responsibility. Psychology explains it clearly. When a person cannot tolerate guilt, discomfort, or internal conflict, they shift that weight outward. And whoever is closest usually carries it. You. That's why you end up doubting, staying silent, adapting, reducing yourself. Not because you are weak, but because you are trying to maintain the bond. But a relationship that only holds up when you make yourself smaller is not a balanced relationship. It's a relationship where one dominates the emotional space and the other survives in it. Recognizing these signals doesn't mean demonizing anyone. It means stopping betraying yourself. Because feeling isn't a mistake. Remembering isn't an attack. Asking for clarity isn't overreacting. And the sooner you understand that you are not too much, the sooner you will stop trying to fit where they always make you doubt. This is not a call to confront. It is a call to observe, to name what before had no name. From there, decisions become clearer. Not all relationships should be saved, but all people deserve to feel safe within themselves. And if any of this story resonated with you, it's no coincidence. It's your intuition asking to be heard again.